Andrew Berry was asked the question, does he need to see Baker Mayfield play next season to make a decision on if he is the long-term answer, the quote-unquote franchise quarterback, if you will? Here's Andrew Berry.
You really do try and take a wider lens, so to speak. But really, again, like our focus is on playing our best football in December and positioning ourselves to really play in the postseason this year because we have a ton of meaningful games. And that really significantly outsizes, any individual player decision across the roster, that we're gonna make. So there will be plenty of time to think through, how we're going to build the roster into next year. But at the end of the day, everybody's focus and energy, within the organization is making sure that, we do everything in our power to maximize the current season.
So, Tim, how much can the Browns really judge Baker Mayfield based on how beat up he is this year?
I don't think a lot. I mean, it's not even just his injury. I think it's the injuries, across the board and to the key elements of the passing game. And one thing that stood out to me when Jack Conklin was playing on Sunday, that first series, Baker looked like Baker. He looked comfortable. He looked confident. He was letting it rip. He was accurate. I think one of his only incompletions was a drop by Donovan Peoples-Jones. And then as soon as Conklin leaves the game, we've seen the Baker that we've seen for most of the season, inaccurate, indecisive, double clutching, not sure of himself. And I think, those elements play into it in addition to his injuries. And again, those are things that aren't going to heal themselves up until the offseason when he goes and has surgery. I just think with this whole passing game, this offensive operation, just this whole season in general, I feel like this has kind of been a Murphy's Law year for the Browns where anything that can go wrong pretty much has gone wrong. They've been injured. They have not been able to produce in clutch situations. Kevin Stefanski's calls just haven't worked. The schedule has been brutal, and this ending stretch, it doesn't let up. In fact, it gets even harder for the Browns in these final 5 games, especially with the bye being so late. It's hard to judge Mayfield on this stuff when there's so many things out there that have happened to him in this offense that have just turned this season on its head. And I think sometimes we make judgments on things. We try too hard to point to one thing when the reality is there's tens of or hundreds of things that go into play with this sort of thing. But so I think, going into 2022, as long as Mayfield and these key guys are healthy, that's when I think we do get the full final evaluation on whether or not he is a $35 to $40 million quarterback.
The other thing that I've said a couple of times is good general managers don't make a decision on key things like your quarterback until you have to. And the Browns really don't have to make it this year. They really don't have to make it next year. They could always franchise them. Again, that might not be something that, Baker Mayfield takes kindly to, but you have plenty of time to make sure you get this decision right. And this decision is big enough that you want to make sure you get it right. You have to. If Andrew Berry is certain one way or another, great. But he doesn't have to be for another year or two.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've seen out of Andrew Berry is he's not necessarily committing to a lot of things long-term because the picture can change so many times. I mean, if you look at last season and Baker Mayfield signed an extension coming in this year, he performed poorly, everybody would be saying what a terrible contract that is. But I think in football, a lot of times you have outlier seasons. In any professional sport, you have outlier years where for whatever reason, it's just not clicking the right way. And I think for Baker, potentially this is an outlier year, and just for this team in general. And, you got to be flexible about these sort of things. And that's the buzzword I was thinking about with Andrew Berry is flexibility, not locking yourself into too many things all at one time, playing the long game, never really going all in until you absolutely have to. And I think that's what we're seeing with Baker right now is you've got 2 years to make, this decision, take all the time you really need to do it, but don't rush yourself into a bad decision just because it's a position that you need.